Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of one of my most favorite 90s Nicktoons of all time, and also a show that has really played a huge part of my childhood and even has meant a lot to me growing up. And that is none other than Hey Arnold, which was created and directed by Craig Bartlett and was written by Steve Vixton, Michelle Lemira, and many other talented writers who were also writers of some of the most memorable episodes of this show. Now, I first caught this show ever since I was about 7 years old, and the first episodes that I've watched were Little Pink Book and Lockjaw. And automatically, I was instantly hooked to these episodes and to a lot of the episodes that were going on in the show, not to mention the characters as well. It's like every time I saw these characters on screen, it's like I want to be their best friend. I want to be like their companion and all that because that's how I really related to them. It's like I felt a certain connection with these characters, and even when I was growing up. In fact, this show was basically the one that made me had a lot of favorite characters to root for and a lot of characters that I really want to see, like, getting the best in life. Sure, there were some characters that kind of irritated me, but there has to be a balance, right? But still, this show really meant a lot to me because this was a show that wasn't preachy in its messages. This was a show that really saw that its audience, whether they be young or old, are really intelligent enough to get the messages. And of course, this was also a very clever show, especially when it makes a lot of references to a lot of well-known works. Like, for example, False Alarm had several references to 12 Angry Men, and What's Opera Arnold is pretty much a homage, or pretty much a sort of Hey Arnold version of the Looney Tunes classic What's Opera Doc. And a lot of other clever references to the show, whether it be like famous authors, painters, artists, you name it. This show was definitely a lot of fun to watch, mostly because it was clever and the characters were relatable, and it was just a lot of fun and really colorful and very interesting as well. So let's get into what I thought about the story, the animation, the music, the characters, and the voice acting. Now, story-wise with this show basically has two episodes in the same show. So this is the standard for certain shows. Yet they have a story that seems to be intertwining. Yes, there are some moments in which the continuity may not always be there, but, well, it's sort of there in some episodes from time to time. But the one contributing factor that the show really has is Helga's undying and obsessive love for Arnold. That pretty much is sort of like the running gag in the show. Helga has a really rough exterior where she's a bully and she hides in a corner and she says all these soliloquies of love, of her love for Arnold, and how she feels so tormented that she can't tell her secret to him. And then we have Brainy breathing on her and she knocks the shit out of him, which is very entertaining. And what I've found that's really common in this show is that it manages to balance comedy with drama, slice of life, a little bit of supernatural, and a lot of other stuff really combine into just one really interesting and really great package. You get a lot of heartwarming moments, and then you get some funny moments. You get moments in which you feel rather scared or feel rather intrigued and feel like having this sense of suspense. And the next moment you get something calm and just makes you have a breather. And there are several moments in this show that really made me feel that way. And the episodes that really stood out for me are the ones that really talk about Helga's life or even that of Arnold's life and a lot of the other denizens of Hillwood, which I'll get to the characters later. So overall, the story is really intriguing and really fun to watch, especially when you see these characters grow. Now, what's quite interesting is that, yeah, sometimes the characters have started out as their established personas, but then later on they develop a lot more and more into their personalities when I talk about the characters. So that's pretty much interesting in this show. You get to see a lot of character development present in this show, and it's really cool. And yes, even though some of the minor characters are just one-timers, they still get a whole lot of development. So this show really does offer a lot of good character development for each character, and it really is a lot of fun to watch. Now, the animation, yeah, it's really colorful and really bright and vibrant. Now, what I did notice about Season 1's animation was that it was a lot, the characters looked, well, thin-looking, and they weren't really that good looking, but it's still colorful, which sort of made sense because the animation made in Season 1 was done by Games Animation, but during the parts of the later parts of the first season, it managed to get better. The character designs seemed smoother and a bit rounder. And what's also quite interesting was that each of the characters' heads have different shapes. Like Arnold, his head is shaped like an American football. Gerald's head is basically an inverted ice cream cone. And you have Nadine, whose hairstyle and even her head looks like a spider, a squash Harold's head that looks like a squash, and many, many, many other types of weird shaped heads. So, unlike Doug, where a lot of the skin colors are different, which is at times kind of weird, this show manages to have characters in a lot of realistic skin colors. Like you have your Caucasians as fair-skinned and your African Americans being dark-skinned, and many, many others. And Oscar Kokoschka is basically ruddier. He basically has a redder shade compared to a lot of the other characters in the show. So that's what I found really interesting about the animation. Now, after that, and Season 2 onwards, the animation was done by Sneeush, and it looked a lot more polished. And let's just say that the animation got a lot better and better as the series progresses. But the one thing that managed to stay consistent in the animation is none other than the backgrounds. Let me just tell you that these are some of the best looking backgrounds that I've seen. Yes, it's not Pixar quality. Yes, it's not Disney quality. Yes, it's not Miyazaki quality. But it has its own quality in which I could see that it almost looks like I'm stepping into a painting of modern art. It really is gorgeous all around. And the character designs are pretty detailed as well. So great props in the animation. The music was what also makes the show very memorable. The predominant use of music in this show ranges from jazz to a lot of R&B music, not really like hardcore R&B music, but it's mostly like jazz. The constant use of jazz is really prominent in the show with the use of saxophone, bass drums, and many, many other instruments. Heck, the opening is very catchy. And it really shows that, yeah, Helga is calling Arnold all the time because she's the one person that, yes, she's secretly in love with him. Yes, she wants his attention. Yes, she wants him to notice her. And it really does start getting interesting when you think about the context of this opening. Yes, the first 3 seasons of the opening had like it was really great to listen to. But then on the fourth and fifth season, they switched up the opening to having a lot more instrumentals and having a key change before the end of the song. Whereas with the first to third season's opening, the key was really consistent all throughout. So not only does the show make great use of jazz music, but it also makes use of other music genres as well, like rock or a little bit of R&B, then a lot of classical music as well, especially with Helga's soliloquies. Now that's when classical music is used. So the show really does make a huge variety of different types of music that can really depend on each of the moments that the character feels, and its predominant use of jazz music really does give you the setting that this is all set in a big city, and this is how city life functions. So it's really, really a feast for your ears as well. The characters are probably some of the most memorable that I've seen. Now let's start off with our main hero, Arnold. Now in the first to second season, Arnold starts off as this daydreamer who, well, is also an idealist as well. Usually the scenarios in the first season episodes is pretty much this. Arnold is having a daydream in which he has this weird adventure of him, whether going on a safari or many other interesting stuff like surfing and all that stuff. And then he gets woken up and gets caught daydreaming. And then the show continues from there. And then in the second to third season, and even to the fifth season, he's not that much of a daydreamer, though he does daydream from time to time. Though in the fourth to fifth season, he becomes more of like a rationalist person who has to help out others because, well, he's pretty much like the person who gives really great advice. So, yeah, some people might find it to be Flanderization, but to me, I really didn't find it Flanderization. I found it to be like a certain development for Arnold, who goes from being a daydreamer to being a very rationalistic person who is very helpful with people in their problems and really gives them the courage and the determination to really better themselves as people. So you could really see why Arnold has been a huge part of my childhood, because he is pretty much one of my hugest role models of all time. He's someone that I really looked up to so much because it's like he really does mean a lot to me. Oh, sure, he's not a perfect character. He has his flaws. For example, he does experience loneliness. In one instance, with Olga Comes Home, Arnold does have sentiments of having an older brother, and that also is stated when he first meets Frankie G in Cool Jerk. And yes, he also does make mistakes. Remember the episode Cool Jerk? Yeah, he blindly trusted Frankie G to be his friend, and because he was so impressed by how cool he is as a guy and all that type of stuff, and how much of the cool stuff that he has, like a cool stereo, and he has the same taste as music with him, and only to find out that Frankie uses him just to rob a not really convenience store, but it was a techno store, which really shows that yes, even though Arnold is a very well-rounded character, he does have his flaws, and that's what makes him all the more relatable, because yes, there are some moments in which people like us could think we're on the right track in our lives, but sometimes there are moments that sort of make us realize that maybe some of these people that we've had as friends may not always be the best friends that we had. And that's what I truly liked about Arnold. Yes, on the surface, he is a character who's very well adjusted, gives really great advice, and is a very great role model. But let's not forget, he also has some of his human flaws as well. And that's what makes him a very interesting and human character as well. And yes, he also does miss his parents from time to time, so that does also give us a retrospective of who Arnold is as a character and why I really root for him that way. Then we go to his best friend, Gerald. Now, Gerald is pretty much the cool guy and also the resident storyteller, all thanks to someone by the name of Fuzzy Slippers. He's Arnold's best friend as well, and he is one of the greatest best friends that I've seen in all of television history. Well, mostly in animation history. He really is someone who could stick by Arnold so well, and he really has a very cool, laid-back personality, and a very fun one at that, too. Yes, he also does show concern for Arnold, and like in Cool Jerk, where he's also concerned that the guy that Arnold is hanging out with may not be the guy that he will think that he's going to be a good person to him forever. And he really proves himself to be a very great friend and a very great role model, also to me as well. And especially to Arnold. He's a very great friend to him. They stick with each other through thick and thin. And not to mention, they have one of the coolest handshakes ever. Or, I don't know what you call this, like thumb bumps? Yeah, pretty much. They have one of the coolest thumb bumps ever, which has like a certain springy sound effect, and he really does stick through Arnold through thick and thin. Speaking of Arnold, he also does see the best in people, which I really love as well. So Gerald is very much a great best friend, and he's also his own person as well. He's not a carbon copy of Arnold. He's his own person, and that's what really makes him great. Then we get to Helga. At first, when I was a kid, I didn't really care for Helga as a character. I thought she was the crazy girl who was mean and pushy and all that. But as the show progressed, my heart really went out to her, even as I grew up. The one episode where she really shone was Helga on the Couch, in which she talks to Dr. Bliss about her home life, of how crappy it is, and especially for her love of Arnold. Now, I'm not going to spoil everything for you, because you'll probably find out once I make a top 20 favorite Hey Arnold's list, which is somewhere along the line. So, Helga is a very interesting character, because when you think about it, on the surface, she is a mean bully who is very pushy, very aggressive, and really seems to be unpleasant to those around her. But when you look at her on the inside, you find out that she's very, very sweet, very much a poetic person. She loves writing. She loves art. She loves using these huge words that not a lot of people could use nowadays. And she's a very multidimensional character. So ultimately, out of all the favorite Nicktoon female characters that I like, I have to say that Helga Pataki really is one of my favorite, aside from Katara from Avatar: The Last Airbender. She really is an awesome character, and yeah, sure, sometimes the situations that she finds herself in order for her secret not to be known to other people is rather hilarious, like Helga's parrot, and Helga blabs it all. And I find those hilarious, but sometimes they can be kind of repetitive. But still, regardless, I feel that Helga is definitely a very fun character to watch. And we have Grandpa Phil, who is made of funny. Yeah, he's also wise as well, and he also exhibits his own brand of wisdom. But more than anything, he's very entertaining, very funny, and quite down-to-earth as well, though he can be eccentric from time to time. Now, Grandma Gertie, oh boy, she is, without a doubt, one of the most fun grannies that I have seen in animated history. And she is totally up there with the likes of Granny from Looney Tunes, and a lot of the other badass grannies like Slappy the Squirrel from Animaniacs. She is made of wind, and she gets herself into a lot of crazy situations. She dresses up in costumes and is just so full of energy and excitement that every moment on screen, she just definitely steals the show for me because she is that funny. And Phoebe Heyerdahl, I really loved her as a character ever since I was a kid. She was another character that I looked up to way so much all the time. I really loved her as a character because, well, as a kid, I loved the characters that were intelligent, that were very well versed, and that used a lot of these huge words that you'd usually find in a really big dictionary or even in a college lecture. And Phoebe Heyerdahl was a character that I really adored because, yeah, on the surface, she does seem like a pushover, but she's very articulate, very much fun to watch, and she does exhibit moments where she can be, like, more than she ever is, like Tour de Prix, in which she proved herself to be a very determined and very much a fun driver as well. So there are moments in which Phoebe can prove herself. She's also a great fencer, and well, let's just say that she is just a lot of fun to watch every single time. Especially the other characters, like Stinky, who is a boy from the South, and Sid, who is this kid who dresses up in a leather jacket, but is also very, paranoid of a lot of things. Stinky's also funny as well, and the same thing with Sid. Harold is another fun character to watch, even though I didn't really care for him in the first season because he seemed too much like a loud, obnoxious bully. Though he did get better in the later seasons, and I really like him as a character. And then we have Rhonda, the resident rich girl, who can be pushy and snooty at times, but other times she can exhibit that she's definitely a fun character and a really great character as well. Then we have Nadine, Rhonda's best friend. Yeah, her roles in some of the episodes may not always be huge or may have been reduced to cameos, but she's a very down-to-earth character who loves collecting insects. And then we have Mr. Quinn. Now, I've already talked about Mr. Quinn during my Arnold's Christmas review. He's a really fun character, very optimistic, very happy-go-lucky, very jolly, and quite down-to-earth as well. And just a lot of fun to watch. Mr. Potts, well, Ernie Potts, even though he can be short-tempered sometimes, he's very entertaining to watch from beginning to end. Now, Oscar Kokoschka isn't really a character I'm really crazy about, mostly because he's a freeloader, and he is not really a good role model to kids, mostly because he's married to his long-suffering wife who has to do all the damn work for him. So he's pretty much a character that I'm annoyed with, even though he has some pretty good moments. And then we have other characters like Wolfgang, who is a 5th grade bully who torments the other 4th graders just because he's the big shot and all that stuff. His henchman Edmund, Mickey the Weasel, and many, many other colorful characters in Hey Arnold. Then we have the demanding coach, Coach Wittenberg, his wife Tish, and of course their son Tucker, who had an episode of his own called The Benchwarmers. And with Tucker's case, he's only seen one time, but in the rest of the episodes he's never mentioned again, which is kind of sad. And let's just say that, in short, all the characters, whether they be big or small, major, supporting, or cameo, have made a huge impact on my life and really made my heart go out to them. Not to mention the voice acting is top tier. As I've mentioned before, Arnold ran through 4 or a total of 5 voice actors. First there was J.D. Daniels, then came Torrin Caudell, then came Philip Van Dyke, And then came Spencer Klein, and then in some episodes, Alex D. Linz. I have to say that each of these voice actors really managed to bring something special to Arnold. Though if I have to pick one of my favorite voice actor for Arnold, I'd have to say Spencer Klein, because he manages to make Arnold a very cool-headed kid who's also very much the only sane man, and he really does a very good job with Arnold's voice. Yes, I will say that Torrin Caudell was a really great Arnold, and even the same thing can be said about Philip Van Dyke. But I have to say that Spencer Klein really did cut it for Arnold, and was a really good replacement for both Torrin Caudell and Philip Van Dyke. Jamal Walker-Smith, who voiced Gerald, was just awesome in his role. He managed to get all the nuances and all of the wise cracking jokes that Gerald makes from time to time, and it's just really awesome. Francesca Marie Smith as Helga. This has to be one of her most memorable roles of all time. Then you have other voice actors and actresses like Andy McAfee, Tress MacNeille, Justin Shenkarow, Jordan Warcol, Dan Castellaneta, Maurice LaMarche, Kath Soucie. Then you even have Craig Bartlett and James Belushi, Kathy Najimy, many other voice actors of the time and even actors who even had careers as television actors and even film actors. So overall, this show was really what defined my childhood growing up. It is extremely well written, the characters are memorable, and everything about this show really makes me want to watch it over and over again. And if you haven't heard about this show, then I highly suggest that you go watch it yet. So you go watch it now, unless you've been living under a rock. So, this is definitely a show that I could recommend to everyone. And if I were to give this show a rating, I would really give it a well-deserved 4.5 out of 5. It's a very fantastic show with memorable characters and great stories and equally colorful animation. The reason why it only gets a 4.5 out of 5 is also because of one caveat. It didn't have an ending. It was supposed to end after the Journal with the movie called The Jungle Movie, in which Arnold finds his parents after so many years, but it never got into fruition, mostly due to executive meddling, which I felt so sorry for, because this show really does deserve an ending, and I really believe that this show, Hey Arnold, will get the ending it deserved through the form of The Jungle Movie. So I really do hope that Craig Bartlett and his team will bring the show back from the dead and really make the ending, because it will be so satisfying after so many years of waiting for an ending for the show. I think it's high time that this show manages to get the ending it deserved. And it is a great show that everyone pretty much needs to watch. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in tomorrow morning or maybe early afternoon, where I take a look at the top 20 favorite Hey Arnold episodes of all time. So until then, good night, everybody.